Welcome back to Oneself. With me today and with me always is Adam Bartleman. Adam, thanks for joining me today, my friend.
As always, thanks for having me.
Yeah, bro. Folks, we realize that, if you're a new listener to the show, we might have done a poor job of introducing ourselves, kind of the Jay-Z, allow me to introduce myself. So we're going to do that, even though we're on episode 39. um, because we had a new listener last week and they were engaging with us and just be like, "What's your story? Like, who are you?" And we're like, they're like, "Really appreciate your perspective," but they wanted to know more details on us and kind of why we're discussing these sorts of things. And we're happy to oblige that. Um, just to give a quick backstory on how Adam and I met, we met while we were both traveling through Guatemala. And, Adam and I we're searching, right? We were both searching, and you travel to different places to realize that the answers were all within you the entire time, right? Kind of The Alchemist, the Paulo Coelho book. He goes on this big journey to realize home was where he was supposed to be all along. And that's beautiful. Not that there's not merit in travel, not that it gives you perspective and gratitude, but just the fact that Adam and I were both still searching in those moments, I think. And we're always still searching, and growth is a continual part of life. Never trust anyone who pretends like they have all the answers. We certainly don't. We're just trying to get better with you, the listener. So if you're with us for the first time, we're just going to give a little more context for who we are, and if you've been with us, we appreciate that as well, and maybe give you some more details that you might not have known of why we're talking about these sorts of things and why we're trying to. My goal, I think the shared goal with me and Adam, is just to elevate the consciousness of humanity, right? To make everyone have a little more empathy, be a little better caretaker of this planet that we've been given, this oasis that we've been given. You hear the astronauts that just came back from the moon. It's like we're this little oasis in this big expanse of infinite nothingness. So it's like it's precious, right? This world is precious. You are precious. We're precious. It's enjoy this experience of life, and care for your neighbor. All these things that and you hear, but we're not exactly, as a collective society, as a collective humanity, as a collective species, we're not exactly executing, in my opinion. So that's the opening spiel, Adam. I want to again give viewers a little bit of context on why why you came to this conclusion, why you have the incentive to continue with this project. We're 38 episodes in. Statistically, y'all, most podcasts don't even make it past 21. Just so we're committed. If you haven't gotten that message yet, despite the numbers on the views or whatever subscribers, we hope that'll come in time and the message will spread. But we also recognize that, we just love this work. I love talking with Adam every week. I love thinking about this stuff. I love growing. Yeah, man. So if you would be so kind to indulge anyone listening, just a little context of why we're doing this work on your end, and then, I can paint my picture and we'll come together.
Yeah, for sure. Also looking at it as just like it's the work on ourselves and seeing how everything is so connected, right? Like I would keep doing this, having these conversations every week with Steven, even if nobody was watching. We still record it and put it up, and it's like
Yeah,
it's really just
yeah.
about us, um, a vehicle. Like it's a little bit different type of conversation than just talking to each other on the phone. It's kind of this weird, slightly performative thing. The other people are going to be watching it, so it's like it just gives a different. It just brings a different energy, and it's a bit of a challenge in that way, which is cool. But from my perspective, it just pushes me to think a little bit differently, um, and then yeah, we can kind of dive into these topics and talk about them in a slightly different way. But yeah, I would talk a little. I'd like to speak a little bit on just like how and where we met, because I think that's very relevant. I was kind of leaving my old life behind, quit my old job, sold all my things, sold my place and was just, on the road looking for answers, I guess. And and ending up in this place that seemed very magical and, mystical and spiritual at the outset, but then recognizing after spending some time there that, like, it was all the same toxic patterns of the rest of the world, just wearing a slightly different mask. Um, and ultimately what that brought me to realize is it was just, mirroring myself. It was the stuff that I was still running from, the stuff that I was still not looking at. Uh, just like anywhere else, it was acting as the perfect mirror that I needed in that moment. Not to say that that place isn't special and magical, like everywhere really is, but yeah, that's where Steven and I met. First kind of bumped into each other, at least noticed each other working out in the gym. And then how did it go? I think you met Cassie, who then became my partner first because you guys were discussing music. How
No,
did that
Cassie
go
was
down?
staying in the same,
Oh,
hostel
at the same
as
place.
me.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 and Cassie, her energy's, obviously she's great, right? So I was like, "Oh, like, Cassie seems cool," there's a lot of cool people in that hostel. Yeah, it was just like, clock Cassie is like, she seems like good people, and then, I think, yeah, she brought you along or you guys were cooking one time or, and so I, saw you again
Right.
at that moment, so saw you guys together and yeah, the rest
Yeah.
is, as they say, history, as we form that
Right.
friendship.
Yeah, right. Okay. I forgot about that part, the hostel. There's certain points in my life where I look back where it was like, that was a special time, that was a special time, and a special place where there happened to be just like a really cool collection of people coming together at once. Because we met a handful of other really awesome people, during that trip, and, Steven being one of them, and, perhaps foremost in my mind, um, for the friends that
Yeah.
Cassie and I made. So it was, yeah, it was cool, and we just got talking and, sharing stories and, just about our backgrounds, like, what brings you to this random little village on the side of a lake in Guatemala? And it was cool, and I think that was when we planted the seeds there. We were at a cafe in San Pedro on the other side of the lake talking about it one day. And yeah, so we got kind of talking about these ideas, and it wasn't until much later that we kind of hatched the idea to do the weekly podcast kind of format. Um, yeah, that's how that part started anyway. If you wish to add anything, and then we could maybe talk a little bit more about our personal backgrounds, or what do you think, Steven?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting just to add that it was like a year and a half after we met before we, like, started recording this podcast,
Mm,
which was great, like, we were just trying to talk about ideas and, like, I think we both knew that we wanted to do something, we just didn't know what that was gonna look like, and then,
mm,
my background, y'all, is I've been in podcasting, I have a background in, audio engineering, or sound design, it's kinda like what I went to school for, and so, like, I had these skills and, Adam has, I think we both have that curiosity. Adam's, in my opinion, a very smart guy. And, and so, yeah, I was like, okay, like we have these tools, let's just put them together to do something cool. Like we have this skill set, and so, like, let's do something cool. And, it just made sense where I've been in the background in podcasting and I know we're just two more white men with a podcast, y'all. Like I really get it. Um, but I think we're the antithesis of what you see a lot of, right? Like the broadcasts where, they're disparaging women or, encouraging what I see as unhealthy behaviors for young men to follow, unhealthy role models. Um, just spewing a lot of bullshit, honestly, in my opinion. And we try not to judge, but if you're an impressionable young man and you're seeing this stuff and you internalize it, I don't think that's necessarily good for humanity. So my goal is, especially for the younger generations, to maybe look upon us, as an alternative to that, and because that again, we're trying to, a goal is just to be a good example for when I was a child, right? Like I didn't have the best role models. I had teachers or people to look towards and examples of what not to do, but in terms of like people I really admired and wanted to follow in their footsteps, that didn't really come till later in life, till I was really seeking that. 18 and on, not when I was like a child. That's a goal of mine, and just a little more context of us, Adam. It took some time, man. It took some time to percolate the
Yeah.
ideas and to really get it, which was great. Like we were, I think we both knew that we wanted to help people and try to be of service. Um, and like I said, recognize that we don't have all the answers, but there's just something else I want to add too, dude, because as we're again reintroducing ourselves, I was talking to a gentleman the other night, from Wisconsin. His name is Nick, and we just had a great conversation, man. Like I was literally just like kind of giving him the rundown of like oneself, like all of our conclusions that we've come to, and he was just like, yeah, yeah, like he really, really saw what we were coming from, um,
Mm.
or where we were coming from. And I felt super solid in, like, the talking points, you know what I mean? Because we're reiterating it time and time
Mm.
again, and so it's like I was
Yeah.
preaching this message of what we're trying to come, like the love, the empathy, the self-love, the work that there is to be done, community-based, or, like all that stuff, that I was talking about gardens and growing food and, how I think that's so important. And just all the stuff we've kind of touched upon, death, right? Like all the things we've touched upon, trauma.
Yeah.
And he was everything I said, he was kind of like, yeah, like I really enjoy that perspective. He was like, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think I'm really, I was really appreciative that our paths have crossed. And I was like, I wouldn't have been so confident in our perspective if we haven't been talking about it like week after week, man. You know what I mean?
Dude,
So it's
yeah.
just like we had this, like this whole laundry list of the things that we've been talking about. And I was just like, boom, 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 with all of these things that we've talked about. And he was just like, yeah, yeah. He was like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And I was like, well, I think about this with that, And so it was really cool to just like to see that like all the work that we've been doing here, like I've internalized and then I've packaged it in my brain and like, put it out to a stranger, and having it resonate was just really cool.
Yeah.
And I want to share that. And but also, not to sidetrack too much, man, but yeah, to, dive back into our paths before this and, what kind of led us here. But yeah, I just want to share that too. It's just a cool moment that I wanted to share with you.
That's cool, man. Yeah, and that makes it all worth it, right? Is having that, even if nobody listened to this, it's like just having that the having had the opportunity to get that practice in to speak and move through the world more confidently and, be that light to draw others, in most cases, given the context here, draw other men in or, have other people push them toward this type of content at least. Because
Yeah.
yeah, man, just seeing so much unnecessary suffering that's coming out of ignorance. And again, always always absolutely addressing the fact that, I'm like addressing myself in that too. Um, my current ignorance and my former ignorance hopefully is, diminishing. But yeah, doing our best to be our best selves in order to lift ourselves up so we can lift the collective up. And yeah, in many cases here, it's like working with young men, working with men, so that they're not out there abusing women, children, each other, themselves. And yeah, man, because like that's the sort of the background that I came from a little bit more, I guess. Like just that kind of toxic masculinity kind of stuff. Like the jobs that I've worked in, the just school, sports. I mean, I think it's the same for you, Stephen, right? Like we've both
Yeah.
seen very similar things from slightly different perspectives. Um, and for me, it was just like seeing it and just like the seeing all the suffering that it caused for everyone involved. Like men thinking they're on top of the pyramid in this like patriarchal world, but really they're not, like if they're causing pain to other people, that means they're not doing well inside, right? Like hurt people. So just seeing that, like, being, as we say all the time, becoming a more and more keen observer of life as I've moved through this journey of this incarnation, and seeing like, man, this really isn't working. And yet we keep doing the same shit over and over again. And, like the definition of insanity, expecting something different. And just like, what is it? Like, because it's obvious, we're all smart enough to see this, and everyone does see it, whether they're like consciously aware of it or not. We all pick up on the misalignment and the distortion that exists in our collective and in our individual experience. So it's just like, what does it take to like snap us out of it, to actually act and behave differently? Because I think it's like this fear that's holding us in those patterns, fear of being different. So like if we can just kind of get it together to kind of find the others, let everyone know our experiences, and remind people that there's nothing to be afraid of. When we look at something more closely, we see the illusion dissolve, and we see like there's nothing to fear. um then we can start to move in love. We can start to move out of this fear paradigm and back into the truth of who we are. And I mean, I guess I can loop in a little bit of my background personally and my journey. My sort of realization that's attached to that was like, most recently, like my last regular job, I guess. My last sort of 9 to 5 type job was being a firefighter for 10 years. The first half of my career there, I was like very much one of the regular guys, and I drank a lot, and I was, a sour, toxic individual. I'm not saying that they all were. There's like a faction. There's a faction of,
Yeah.
just
I
like
thought
any
you were gonna say
workplace.
sourpuss.
Yeah, that
I
too.
was like I was
But
like,
there's like
"Sourpuss is a great word." I was just a little
just like
sourpuss, you know?
yeah, yeah, just keeping it light. Just like any workplace, there's always like that side of it, and I think in a job like that has a high degree of stress and trauma and stuff, sometimes it can be a little elevated, and I was definitely a part of the problem. I worked with a lot of a lot of nice, positive people, but there were a handful of toxic ones, and I was one of them. Yeah, it was just kind of like spiraling in my personal life, and all the while thinking that I had everything together, because on paper I was doing, pretty well in my life, and people respect that job and everything and all that kind of stuff. So coming to this place though, where my personal life was getting so out of control, that I started coming to some realizations through some different avenues, um where I kind of realized I was responsible for creating the environment in which I was living, in which I was experiencing life. And yeah, I basically began to see that like I needed to make some changes, and that um the way that I expressed a little bit more specifically, I started making some changes in myself, and then going against the grain a little bit with the culture of my workplace. So just being like that kind of being kind of an alternative character there, I guess, just little things like diet. I quit drinking alcohol, all these things that I would have probably been a little bit more afraid to do, to stand out from the pack in my earlier years. But like I got to this place of realizing that it wasn't worth it, like kind of following, just kind of falling in, and doing the same thing as everyone else was causing me so much pain, that I just got to this place of realizing it's not worth it, and I started to kind of walk a more unique path. Um, at the same time, kind of shifted friend groups as things happen in my at work as well as in my personal life. And obviously there's a blend there, crossovers. So that started to happen, and yeah, I just kind of recognized like there's nothing to be afraid of. Like I was like the non-drinking, heavily tattooed, vegan firefighter guy. At the start, I got kind of like I got um, made fun of. I got, like, just razzed pretty hard, which is like part of the culture, which is fine. It's no big deal. But like, um, one of those things where I recognized, uh, whatever it is you're doing, like in my experience, whatever it was I was doing, as long as I was consistent and like stuck to my guns, so to speak, eventually, people will respect you, because that was, my experience. People went from kind of, giving me a hard time to then like asking me questions. And yeah, I guess that was the start of me realizing that I wasn't going to be in that job very long. And I lasted a few more years before I had an experience, um with a plant medicine retreat in another country, and had a very a very deep realization that it was time to go. And I quit that job a couple years ago, and yeah, was when Steven and I met, was kind of very much in that process, in that process of finding myself, which I still, of course, am. Also recognizing that that's just kind of like a turn of phrase, like finding myself. Like there's nothing to find. Like I'm here, but just like the self realization journey, I guess, is a better way of putting it. But yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Steven.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess what, because I think to give context for my story and like how we converged and then started it might be useful to people if you're curious, y'all. So I did everything that I was supposed to, since I was, I my whole life, I did good in school. I went to college. I got the job after college. I did everything that you were supposed to do, right? On paper, everything that I was told by everyone, teachers, guidance counselors, parents. And so I paid for college myself with student loans. And I had the presence of mind to like beg, borrow, and steal. I was an RA in college, which is, one of the students that lives in the hallways, like policing the other students, and which had some crazy moments, but saved me a ton of money. Tried to get scholarships, so I tried to bring that cost down as much as I could. Regardless, even though I hate authority too, and I was authority. And but it was just all in the pursuit of like trying. Yeah, dude, like just trying to play the game, right? Trying to play the game in the best of my ability. And so, I get out of college and I'm like strapped with all these student loans and I'm just like, yeah. And like, so, I'm like, that sucks. But then I do the thing, I'm working in the industry, like I told y'all, like, and, using my degree, which is, on paper. Yeah, great. Makes sense. You did the
Yeah.
thing and you're using your degree. Like, good job, gold star. But I'm like, this fucking sucks. Like after a couple years, my in my mid 20s and I still have all these loans. And I'm like, what the fuck is the point of all this? In terms of just like this isn't life. This isn't living. This is just surviving and struggling and of course, the economic situation of the States is getting harder and harder each year. And I graduated 2018 from college. So, we're, it was a little more than, 6, 7 years out. Never mind. Yeah, we're actually 8. Sorry, y'all. Holy shit, time's flying. Um, but so yeah, 8 years out now. But like I got laid off from the job, right? 2 years ago. Right. And that's when Adam and I met. And that's when I went and traveled because um, again, Jim Carrey has this great quote where he was giving a commencement speech at a college, and his dad was an accountant, and he was like, "My dad could have been a funny comedian, but he played it safe, and he still
Mm,
got laid off from being an accountant. So like, even when you're playing it safe, you could still get fucked,
yeah.
And so I was playing it safe and I still got screwed. So that was like, on top of COVID, right? Where the disillusionment which a lot of people went through during COVID, just the lies we were told where it's like, like all the
Mm,
small businesses have to close, but then the big corporations can stay open. And so like then the small businesses suffer while like the big corporations have record profits and then inflation goes up. It's just like, like the
yeah.
disillusionment was falling in other ways as well, with just like the things that we're being told. And so on top of COVID, on top of getting laid off, I was just like, fuck it. like, none of this makes sense. And I've been a musician throughout that entire time. Right. And so, now music's my priority. Like I still play the game, y'all. Like I get it, like I still have a job and a way to make money, but it's way more on my terms. And freedom is my North Star now, right? So, I think, debt is a form of slavery, if I'm being honest. I think they kind of perfected slavery. They don't need actual shackles on you. They prison of the mind, right? They put these mental things on you to keep you in line. And I was a part of that, right? With my student loans. I was like, this is just like a chain to keep me from doing what I actually truly want to do. And not that the education didn't teach me things, but goddamn, it was way more expensive than it should be. Um, and so then, yeah, so then I'm traveling with Adam. I'm lost. I'm searching, and find some answers as well. This disillusionment keeps slipping. Um, but then, when I met Adam, it's like I still had so much internal work that I had to do, and I always will, right? Like growth is a continual process; it's never done. And I meet Adam, we become friends, and we keep talking, chopping it up, and the growth was continuing throughout that process, even though we weren't like physically, geographically in the same space. I think we were both still keeping up with the internal growth, which was exciting. And and that process continues, and we've kind of taken you on that journey since we started this in July, in July of 2025. And so, again, this is episode 39. So we've been recording pretty much every week since then. Yeah. And the journey continues, y'all. So, yeah, that's just a little context, a little background growth of us. And truth, right? When it comes to like truth, I think like we're both searching for truth. And, when it comes to the individual, the answers lie within. And I saw this quote the other day that I really like. It's like the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you were truly meant to be.
Mm,
And, Adam, we talk about fear, right? And, Adam mentioned this
mhm.
before we hopped on, and, we can touch upon this too, Adam. Like you said narcissism and fear. It's like very, very two sides of the same coin, right? And And I lived a lot of my life in fear. I was afraid of, and that's why I did the program. That's why I went along with what everyone was telling me, because I was afraid and I wanted to do the right thing and, make the right move and, get approval from strangers or family or friends or whatever and, do the societal script. And so I
Yeah,
was in fear, man. I was in fear that entire time, y'all. I was terrified um, of doing the wrong thing or making the wrong move. And now, the conclusions I've come to is that like, just the self-love, right? And this has been a recent, the last couple years, the self-love, like the more you work internally, like the more the external kind of figures itself out, when I have truly become at peace with myself or I'm in that process, it's, I'm never going to be, 100%, but the more I put that effort into that pursuit, the more that reverberates outwards, and I meet people doing the similar thing, and those are like cooler people, more at peace people that are trying to, again, build a better world. Timothy Leary, one of our favorite quotes, like, find the others, right? Find the other cool people doing cool stuff out there, trying to make the world a better place, trying to help, not hurt. And so when I'm doing that internally, it's almost like it just attracts those sorts of people automatically, into my
yeah,
life and the
man.
cool people.
Yeah,
And, you're going to meet amazing people anywhere you go. I don't care where you go. You're going to meet cool people. And, you're going to meet awful people too, probably, it's just like, no matter the location. And I've had the privilege of, wherever I am, just meeting really beautiful people. And, and yeah, like forming that collective, trying again, elevating the consciousness of humanity. And
mm.
yeah, man, that's my 2 cents. That's my little spiel.
Yeah. I want to add just to one thing you said, or rather, like offer a different perspective. I think that we do get to a place of being fully healed. It's like if someone's out there shouting that they're fully healed, no, don't listen to that person. That person,
Don't trust them.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
don't
that
trust them.
person, the person who is there doesn't have to speak about it. And we are, it's like that quote: those who know, those who know don't speak, and those who speak don't know. And so here we are speaking. So, yeah, but I'm you know, acknowledging the fact that we don't know, but we're on that journey. And sometimes like we teach, not that we're like you're teaching, but like that another phrase is like you teach what you have to learn. But recognizing like, yeah, I think that the healing never stops. I think that might be a little bit of a phrase that's grown out of like modern psychology, which is like an offshoot of modern of Western medicine, which is a for-profit model. That's just my own little thought. But I think ultimately we do get to a place of at least having processed all of our trauma and coming to a place of inner peace, and then that growth. I think growth never stops because we're infinite beings. But just within that context, just to be kind of specific, and I'm not sure that's what you meant, but I just wanted to throw that in there that I think we do get to this place of at least inner peace and contentment, and that I've picked up on that phrase being used often in like the modern psychotherapeutic model, and I think it's kind of um, a little bit off personally. Um, but I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, or I can throw my thoughts on fear in there.
No, yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, yeah, I know, yeah, I want you to touch on fear as well, the fear and the narcissism thing, because I think we both had those tendencies, those
Yeah,
behaviors in the past, and again, trying to rectify it, provide a framework or a pathway towards, yeah, atonement, redemption, whatever
yeah,
you wanna call it.
totally, man. Yeah, I think I don't know if I've shared this specifically or in this way at least, but I think um for me choosing to be a firefighter was like big time a fear move. Like I was in first year university and I just had no idea what I wanted to do. The courses I was in, I was like, this none of this makes, none of this lights me up, I should say. I always hated school, and I remember a light bulb going off when I was like 18 and I was like, "Oh shit, I'll be a firefighter." And it was just like I remember it was for me, it was like a safety net move. It was like a great backup. And honestly, and I'm not saying this about everyone, but I know a lot of guys, and a handful of guys used to joke about this actually in my job, and buddies from a neighboring department would be like for a lot of guys it was like the backup career. They were like they were like you know, their construction their construction like, I'm just being honest, this is what some people won't like this, but this was honestly my experience for people telling me this, like, their construction business failed, like, going into the fire department was a bit of a backup. A lot of guys were, like, trying to be pro athletes, didn't make it. Backup was, like, becoming a firefighter, and not that, there's anything wrong with that or anything, like, that's all gravy, but, um I almost found, like, the backup career, like, really early because I just, like, didn't have the courage to really throw my hat in the ring and try, being an artist or being an entrepreneur, whatever it was that I think I was more drawn to, and I think it was kind of the arts, like, I was very artistic as a kid, but, it kind of through my experiences in childhood, it kinda, like, I just kinda pushed that away. Um So ultimately, I think I chose the fire department career because it was um, it was like a ready-made identity. It was just kind of in one way, it was very easy. It was very direct. I didn't have to go out and like be my own boss. I could go somewhere. I like the idea of going to work and like leaving and not taking any homework home with me. The fact that I could go to a building and then just leave um, after the fact. But yeah, it was for me. It was kind of like a, to be perfectly honest, it was kind of a cop out from like, yeah, really throwing my hat into the ring of life. It was just an easy thing to
Yeah.
do, and not to say that it was like an easy job. Of course, it's not an easy job, but and I had an absolute fucking blast there too. Like I loved that job so much, and I really really enjoyed it. And I had like some of the made some great friendships. And, like, laughed the hardest. I've ever laughed, and had, some of the darkest experiences I've ever had. And it was like, so it was really full spectrum, like human experience. Beautiful, awesome job. And I still love it. I got to this point of recognizing that, for me personally on my soul's journey, I just knew that I had outgrown it. It was time to focus on offering service to my fellow humans in a different way and myself. So, like in that journey, I was kind of like, I kind of got to this place of being like, man, I was kind of here at the end of the day when like to cleaning up or like fixing the mess that has happened as the result of a long chain of events, right? Like someone has committed suicide, someone has crashed their car, someone has, accidentally set or intentionally set their house on fire. Like that's like the end result of a problem that started way earlier. And I started coming to realize like I'm interested in like giving my energy to the intervention of this problem like earlier on in the series of events rather than like the final culminating emergency disaster that's going on. I was kind of like, well, why did you get in the car behind the wheel drunk? Like why did you set the car on the car or the house on fire? Why did this person overdose? Why did this person commit suicide? I kind of was like, man, I think I'm suited to working somewhere earlier on in that chain of events, as I said. So that's where like the one-on work came from, the coaching. Now I'm kind of interested in moving in the direction of working with the dying as well. But that's kind of where that started and is leading for me now. But yeah, it was and then in terms of like the other expressions of fear that I've just seen in like the masculine collective working in like these sort of male dominated industries, whether it was the fire department or construction before that, was like, seeing all like the macho tough guy stuff that men that those masks that men wear, and just like spending enough time with them and seeing the truth behind them to know that it's all bullshit, that like all of that stuff is truly rooted in fear. If someone's needing to overcompensate by being a bully or just taking up too much space in the room, it's because they're feeling a lack inside. Like it's just a mirror reflection. It's a compensatory sort of behavior. So yeah, just seeing that and like and wanting to help in a different way, wanting to affect that sort of process in a different way. And that was for me personally, it was like part of that motivation. But like also kind of similar to you, Stephen, in like I kind of I did the things in slightly different path, but I still did the things I was supposed to. I had this job that was respected. In our society. On paper, I was like doing well. I owned my condo. I had the stuff, like I had a nice car, and good job with pension and benefits, and great time off, and and an awesome job that I did really enjoy. But I was still like, holy shit, I'm fucking miserable. Like I've got all this great stuff on paper, but I'm still like kind of hating every day, even though I'm enjoying moments of it, mostly at my work, because
Yeah,
that became one of the drugs, right? Before I had an alcohol problem, but like, many years
yeah,
ago. But like one of the other drug that I was really addicted to was that job, was like the sometimes adrenaline spikes that came with that job. And that really kept me getting out of bed in the morning, was like going to that job, which was on the one hand cool because I really, I got to have the experience of going to a job that I love. But I kind of started to realize like maybe I love it for not the best reasons. And maybe I was still being a little bit selfish, or maybe it was kind of a bit of a narcissistic pursuit in that way, that I wasn't actually offering a super centered form of service. It was like this was actually kind of actually a bit about me. I was like, I'm here for the excitement, and and perhaps not as focused on being the most compassionate caregiving, first responder that I could have been. I was kind of more like, if this isn't like a super exciting call, then I was a little bit checked out at times. So that was one. Well, I think, like, it's interesting, narcissism specifically, right? Because that's just been such a thrown around term in the last few years. Everybody's parent is a narcissist, everyone's ex is a narcissist, everyone's boss is a narcissist. And it's kind of interesting, right? It's like narcissism seems pretty pervasive in our society, especially in the West, where we're so individualistic. And I think, I just came to the realization that, like, yeah, we're all narcissists, like, to a degree. Everybody's in it for themselves. We've been conditioned into this, like, fear-based mindset in, like, the dog eat dog, performance-based, self-esteem kind of world. Like, how could we not be? And what is the root of that is, like, fear. And what is narcissism is, like, me, right? Is ego. It's like a powerful ego. Um, and what is the root of that is, like, the illusion of separation, the idea that we are separate from God, which is, just an illusion. We're in these individuated uh, forms, looking from these perspectives in order to look back on creation in the infinite different ways, at least in my opinion. So but getting lost in it and really believing that we are separate, and that's where, like, the fear comes from, because it's like, well, then I could be lost, then I could be, I can be forgotten, I can be completely disconnected from creation. And it's when someone is in that fear-based mindset that then they're going to start to behave in ways in which most people would classify as, like, sort of typically or classically narcissistic, which, placing more importance on themselves, behaving in selfish ways, hoarding resources, that kind of thing. And so I see that all as just rooted in fear. So fear and narcissism go together. We live in a fear-based paradigm. Again, as we always say, just turn on the news and look at how people are treating each other. So recognizing that we all have narcissistic qualities, and that I don't think anyone, even those who would typically be classified as others as having, like, narcissistic personality disorder, no one is their diagnosis. No one is a label. So I don't truly believe that anyone is a narcissist. They can behave in narcissistic ways. They can have narcissistic tendencies and qualities, but I guess I should say tendencies. But in essence, that's not what we are, because we are little reflections of God going through these different experiences. We are simply identifying in these different ways at different times, and ultimately within the realm of the absolute, good and bad doesn't exist. So it's just what is in this moment. So realizing, like, nobody is completely that, and yet we all have parts of that, just like we all have some good in us. We all have some what we define as bad, right? And these, again, understanding these definitions are always changing, but to bring it back to the point of, like, narcissism is, like, man, that was, my personal journey was starting to recognize it around me, like in some of the people that I hung out with and some of my family members, and really starting to focus on it. And, this, I think a lot of people who have gone through the trauma healing journey have probably been through something similar. Starting to read about it, understand narcissism, and recognizing it around ourselves, but then ultimately it gets to the point, I believe, where we have to turn that gaze inward and recognize, like, okay, well, if I'm surrounded by narcissists, then, like, what is that, again, just to use that term loosely, what does that make me, like, and that's where I had to look at it and start to see my patterns that
Yeah.
were narcissistic, and were very destructive for myself and for those close to me. And that was for me, like, the most uncomfortable work. That's, like, when it starts to get in the really gritty, uncomfortable stuff, and but also providing the most benefit, and alleviating the most pain, relieving the most pressure, and coming to this place of much deeper inner peace in order to be able to Yeah, hopefully, continue on the path and hopefully continue to guide others, yeah, when they're seeking help. But, that's yeah, I guess, like, a short synopsis on the or maybe not so short synopsis on the narcissism perspective that I in my journey.
Yeah, brother. And I think one of the things that was like a breakthrough for me in our discussions was when we brought up like what's the opposite of love. Most people think it's hate.
Mhm,
We propose that it's actually fear, right? Because hate is derived from fear.
mhm,
Fear of the unknown, fear of differences, fear of whatever, right? And so it's when you realize that a lot of the source of pain and suffering in this world is rooted in fear. And but like then what's the antidote to that? It's love in all of its ways. Love within ourselves, love for your neighbor, love for your fellow human being, love for the critters rolling around the earth, just
mhm,
the antidote to all this stuff is, cliche, it's whatever you want to call it. I do not care. It is so needed in this world. It's love, y'all. And that starts internally, when we have these narcissistic tendencies and there's a desire, curiosity to get better. The best place you can start, it's like, don't, you change yourself, you change the world, right? You change that corner of the world. If everyone's doing this work internally, like then it's broad scale collective awakening,
mm,
societal change on a massive scale if everyone is looking internally. And so like we said, there's a lot of fear in this world, but if everyone's doing this work, there's a lot of hope as well, in finding those other people in this place. Adam, any closing thoughts on episode 39 of Oneself, allowing ourselves to reintroduce ourselves? Any closing thoughts?
yeah, man, I think as we often say, always bringing it back to introspection, just having a look inside. That's where we find all of the answers. That's where we get our clarity. So, in this world that is always pulling our attention outward, just turn it around and bring it back to center, bring it back within. I think that's my favorite advice that I give myself anyway.
Folks, if you like what you heard, hopefully that gives you a little more context into us and why we're doing this work and bringing you along this journey of growth and just trying to get better, get back in shape. Please support us in any of the ways that are free, like, comment, subscribe, share with friends, spread the word, right? Find the others, and we'll catch you next week.
See ya.